welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Acton, and with me is Brandon Beck from Crunch Wears No Pants. Brandon, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. What is dead may never die. Thanks for having me.
Exactly. Well, the Wolves are kind of dead, at least for the next few months here. I don't know about you, but like, there's a feeling of like when the season ends, there's a little bit of, and it kind of goes back to like when we were in school. Even if you failed the test or whatever, a little bit is just like, okay, it's over. However the outcome went, and then I think I think Monday was my first full day, like to really just sit in the fact that we're in the off season and do the how many days until the first preseason game, and it was just like I was ready for some time off, and one day in I'm kind of like, okay, I'm done with time off. Let's find something to do here.
Yeah, and I think kind of like from an emotional perspective, like typically when the Wolves get ousted out of the playoffs, there is a little bit of like this emotional like processing time of like, shit, it's over. In the last couple of years, they've gotten further, and there's been like maybe a little more hope than I think there was by the end this time. But I think that kind of the way that the playoffs played out actually made for like a decent way to emotionally process the season ending, because in actuality, the season was over as soon as Dante blew out his Achilles and Ant hyperextended his knee. And that coincided with the most fun game of the season. So, like, while we were processing it being over, we were excited about the best win of the season. And then the rest of it was all just gravy. And they got the doors blown off of them, really, by the Spurs. Like, the series went 6 games, but I think it's pretty easy to explain why it went a little further. Like that series was not close.
No, that's what I kind of said. Like, I think it was really good to see them still beat Denver even after the injuries. I think that said a lot about the team, a lot about just who they are as a group. And I think equally them, not that they lost against San Antonio, but kind of the way that they lost against San Antonio, I think, and we'll talk about it, revealed some flaws as well. We're even setting aside like they were never gonna win that series, especially as you watch game 1 of Thunder Spurs, which I think if in a basketball sense, if that doesn't give you a little bit of existential dread just from a pure basketball, like it kind of has to, right? Like you just watch, like, dude, the 7.5 foot guy hit the Curry shot.
Yeah, but this stuff never lasts as long as you think it's going to last. Like, the question with Wemby has never been, like, is Wemby any good? The question with Wemby is, like, can this guy with the weirdest body in NBA history play healthy basketball for any sort of extended period of time? So it's like, everyone's like, oh, the next, like, X amount of championships belong to the Spurs, but it's like this time last year, like we didn't know if Wemby was ever going to play again because he had a blood clot. And like, so I'm not like wishing anything like that, but I'm just saying like, it always feels like it's worse in the moment than it is, but it's like stuff happens, you know, contracts get big. They're going to have to deal with that De'Aaron Fox contract next year. Like, you still got to go out and fight and like figure your shit out. So I don't know. I'm not like dreading the Spurs. They're good, and like they're probably going to be good for a while, but I don't think they are as inevitable as kind of the conversation after game 1 of that series is going.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. I also just think that guy, I mean, like I said this to a couple people kind of down the stretch of the series. If his like 99th percentile outcome for his career, like basically or 100th percent, everything goes right for that guy, injury, like just getting better year over, all that stuff, is the greatest player of all time. That's like the 100th percentile outcome.
Well, yeah. I mean, his floor, like the thing that separates him from like, and I think he has kind of officially snatched the best player in the world belt that prior to the playoffs I would have still said belonged to Nikola Jokic. But like the thing about Wemby is that like his floor is just so much higher than the floor for any other player really ever has been because of the defensive impact. Like he is by metrics like magnitudes better than anyone else defensively. And so if he becomes the offensive player that he's probably capable of being, because he's not he has these games, but he's not at the level of Nikola Jokic or Luka Doncic or SGA or those guys offensively. But he is so magnitudes better defensively that if he gets even to like 80% of those players offensively, he just blows the doors off of everybody else in the league, because he's just so good on the end of the floor that it's easier to be consistently good at. That's not going to wax and wane as much as offense sometimes does.
Yeah, and my thing was, I looked this up during the series. Like during the regular season, the Spurs like basically didn't post him up like at all. That was not something they did, and that makes sense given that they won 60-something games, basically not going to that. But in Game 1 against the Thunder, they posted him up all the time because they were guarding him with Caruso, and OKC had as much success in that as you'd like to see. And I think that's like the next is like basically, can you be, if he's like like a Hakeem Olajuwon on offense, then it's just cooked. But like, or just like I agree with you. Like the injuries for his whole career will be a concern, even if it's. I mean, he's been, since they started trying to win games, he's been a fairly healthy guy. But like, even like he could theoretically play until he's like mid 40s, just because like on defense, you don't even like, even if he loses the lateral movement, he'll still be a fantastic defender. And then on offense, like later in his career, you could just sit him in the corner and have him shoot three. Like he's so tall that like he's never going to be an offensive liability. Like, do you know, like in the same way Rudy is.
He's got to be able to move though. Like we always think that like the crazy tall guy is going to stay good, but it's like a lot of the crazy tall guys, and granted, they're not as tall as Wemby. A lot of the crazy tall guys' careers end like very much quicker than we expect them to, because like we don't quite understand how valuable being able to move is.
Yeah.
Like
I'm more saying like just like an off the bench big, like if
but I mean like if he like Boban like was nothing. And once again, I'm not saying that Victor Wembanyama is Boban, but like if all of a sudden he has like enough debilitating injuries that he can't move, then he kind of is Boban.
That's true. And to my 99th percentile point, like Kareem, but prior to LeBron, was the poster child for long career. So like obviously like that's what you're trying. And even now Rudy, like Rudy's going to end up being like having a pretty, not like the Kareem way, but like I would expect Rudy to play for another couple. Like physically he looks great for his age. So that's if he's on the Rudy Gobert water filter treatment. I guess that's there's we don't need to break down Rudy's health habits, but like he's I don't know, it's something to take from Rudy's game, and it sounds like he has in some way at least.
That is true.
All right, let's focus on the Timberwolves. There'll be plenty of time to break down the West Finals, which I mean that game one is just like an all-timer. Double overtime, just throwing haymakers at each other. Holy cow! Like in the short term, like even if the Wolves had gotten through San Antonio, especially with the injuries,
by Oklahoma
they would have
City.
gotten. The series would be over already, despite the one game of being played. But yeah, so the Wolves go out in 6. I think the fact that they got it to 6 is kind of a miracle in a way. Obviously, Wemby decapitating Naz Reid is a big reason why that happened. But I think the Wolves deserve credit. Is a weird word to say, but like the Wolves deserve some sort of, like, they got up under his skin. Like he didn't just elbow Naz Reid in a vacuum. But I guess what big picture takeaway from, I guess we already talked about it a little bit, but like was this a successful season just maybe more broadly? And it's a difficult question to answer because I think it's multifaceted, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it would be silly to say like this they passed this season with flying colors. Like I don't think this season was an A by any means. But I also think like, you know, of trying not to be prisoner of the moment, I think this season was about what a reasonable expectation at the end of it could have been coming into the season. So like, yeah, successful in that, like, it's a passing grade, like it's a C of a season probably. But I mean, they did just do a poor job. Like they didn't take the regular season seriously enough. There's been all the media day stuff about them not establishing championship habits. And, you know, that was stuff that going into this season was supposed to be the strength of this team with like the vaunted continuity that we talked about. You know, I have my own thoughts about, was the continuity a plan or just the fallout of plan A being trading for Kevin Durant not working and them being kind of stuck at the table with no plan after that. Sure, I think that's probably what happened. But ultimately, I think this was a team that going into this season, my thought was that I thought they were pretty firmly should have been considered a top 4 team in the Western Conference. And it didn't play out that way seeding wise, but I think when it all shakes out, you know, second round loss to the clear best or second best team in the NBA, like whichever team wins this Western Conference Finals, unless the teams just kind of beat each other to death, I think is going to walk through the Cavs or Knicks. I think you can probably comfortably say that the Timberwolves were one of the 4 best teams in the Western Conference. You know, like they demonstrated on the court that I think they were better than the Nuggets. You know, I think they were better than the Rockets. You know, maybe coin flip on the Lakers if the Lakers are healthy with Luka Doncic, whatever. But I think, like I said, going into the season, that's kind of where I thought they would be. Going out of the season, I think that's kind of where they ended up. But they didn't overachieve, and I think that's what the sign of a successful season is kind of like rising above what those expectations are. And this is the worst finish they've had in the last 3 seasons. So, like I said, I don't think it's an abject failure. I'm not a person that wants to fire the coach. I don't think that they made some grave mistake in roster construction or anything like that. I think this was a team that was above average, and they made it to an above average point and got bounced by a team that was better than them.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I've separated it into 2. Like the regular season by itself was a failure. I think that's fair to say. Like they more or less admitted that, like you alluded to, they just didn't take it seriously, and so and they ended up a 6th seed when they should have been top 4. Like I think,
but I mean, regular season, does that matter? Like
no,
like it didn't. Where they ended up in the playoffs, like I don't think anything that they did in the regular season would have ultimately changed what happened in the playoffs. Is like if they had lost to the Nuggets on the road in a Game 7, then that would have come into play, and they were close to that being a factor. But like ultimately, like they're kind of right that they didn't need to take the regular season seriously. That's not the case if they want to elevate to a level of San Antonio or Oklahoma City. But like I said, for where they ended up, they kind of were right that the regular season was just kind of a boring march to where they ended up.
Yeah, it's kind of a process versus results thing for me, because I do think the result of which, like, it didn't end up mattering. If they were the 3 seed, they would have gotten Houston, and they would have wiped the floor with that Houston team and been right back into San Antonio like they were. So that's fine. Or if they were the 4th or 5th seed, they would have gotten an injured Lakers team, and they would have wiped the floor with them and gotten beat by Oklahoma City in the next round, almost certainly. Like so, but I think it's more of a failure that, like, to beat a team, to win 4 straight playoff series, you have to on some level, like, just build the habits, build the, and I even when I say it, like, it sounds cliche. I just think I really do. It matters on some level that you have, like, you're just willing to, like, the smarts and the basketball IQ and, like, the problem solving, like, they just never had that. And it just has to be built on the regular season. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, they did outplay Denver in a severe way. That series might end in 5 if guys don't get hurt. And so it doesn't matter. And I think my guess is that especially given that there's almost certainly going to be more roster shakeup next year. I don't think similar like if in the NFL they always say like defense doesn't necessarily carry over, or maybe turnovers don't necessarily carry over year to year, right? A team's moodiness and a team's no non give a shit about the regular season, I'm not sure how much carryover there is for that when if and when there's roster changes. And that's to me why the biggest like I don't think they made a bad move in the offseason. In terms of like you had to re-sign Nas, you had to re-sign Julius. Once you did those two, you couldn't go into the second apron to keep Nikhil. It just doesn't even like it's not even about the ownership money. But it did like the dreaded C word, like a continuity. Like I think that turned into complacency pretty easily. And I think just simply trading doesn't even have to be the guy everyone wants traded. Just shake any sort of roster shakeup, I think will shake off most of that rust. Do you agree?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to like. Obviously, the biggest culprit in the like moodiness department is Julius Randle. Like, put that aside right now. I do think, though, Julius Randle aside, that this has been a relatively outside of one season where they had the best season of their career, which of maybe franchise history, which happens to coincide when they had the youngest, spryest Mike Conley that they've ever had on their team, playing the best basketball he's ever played for them. I do think this is kind of a characteristic of Anthony Edwards' teams. And I mean, he said it in December. Like they were not even close to the playoffs. They weren't even halfway through the regular season. And he was like, man, we're so bored and ready for the playoffs. Yeah. And it's like to some degree, like, yes, I do think like roster changes. Like if using just a hypothetical example, like if they just like infused Drew Holiday into this team, I do think Drew Holiday would be more apt to take the regular season seriously, and that would have a positive impact on the team. Like that is like the type of thing where, yeah, that could fix some issues. But ultimately, I think it's a problem that your best player is bored by the regular season. And like, honestly, more playoff series wins and more deep playoff runs makes that problem worse, not better, in a weird way. Like, the more game sixes he plays in and the more big playoff wins they have, the more he's going to just be like, well, it's going to reinforce the fact that the regular season just doesn't necessarily matter. And like, you can fall back on, he's still young. Like this might be the time that he touches the stove and goes into the offseason and decides like it's time to take the regular season seriously, and they come out and win 60 games next year. Like that is on the table. But I do think ultimately it goes back to the best player on the team. And I do think it's a characteristic of teams that Anthony Edwards has been on that there is just kind of a casual nature to the regular season pretty consistently.
Yeah, I 1000% agree. I think like there's other players that don't take the regular season seriously, just like Ant does. But I think the easiest way and the most straightforward way is if the best player was like that. You don't even have to do it like the Thunder do, but like Shea is a good example of the opposite. Where I mean, again, he broke Wilt's record for scoring consistency. But like, if the best player was more consistent about the regular season, I think most of, if not all, the roster would fall behind him. And to my point of like finding the problem solving skills during the regular season that carry over, like all of that, it all really comes down to Ant. And in a certain way, that's unfair in the sense of to put everything on one player in any sport, but even basketball is kind of unfair. But like that's how basketball works. That's how the NBA works.
And if you're gonna be like if you want to be considered one of the best players in the world, mm-hmm. that is the standard that you are going to get held to. And I think that is the standard that he would want to get held to, right? Like,
yep.
It's not unique to Anthony Edwards. This is the same standard we hold Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the healthy version of Jason Tatum and Luka Doncic to, like, we expect those guys to set a tone. And, like, when Luka Doncic is bitching at refs and not running back on defense, he gets roasted for that when his team's not winning. And like like you said, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is like the epitome of consistency. That is like his superpower, is that he is just always the same player, like night in and night out. So I just think that is, if they're actually trying to level up, I think that is the next level for Anthony Edwards. Because, he keeps adding stuff to his game. And I don't know how much more, like, aside from just like more consistent engagement and attention on the defensive end, I don't know how many more like offensive skills he needs to put in his bag. Like,
yep.
He's one of the best 3-point shooters in the world. Now he can kill from the mid-range. He's one of the best guys at getting to the rim and finishing. When he doesn't have Rudy Gobert on the floor, he's really, really good at getting off of double teams. Like, I think the offensive bag is more or less complete for Anthony Edwards. So now the question is, like, how do you bring the level of energy and focus you need to, like, night in and night out? Like I said, to put yourself in a position so that you are hosting playoff series and you are talked about in the same conversation as the two teams playing in the Western Conference Finals right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's really just, it's on there. I always kind of say Ant just doesn't quite get it. Like the what it takes to win a title as the best player on that team. Like he mentioned Dwayne Wade during the playoffs. And it's like, dude, there's a lot of aspects of D Wade's game that like you don't have right now. And I think you're more than capable of getting there. He's more than capable of getting there, but like, but there's a chance that he's not. And like, this is just mentally the player Ant is always going to be. And if that's the case, the Wolves will be a fantastic team for a long time with him on the roster, and they'll win many playoff games in playoff series. But like, in terms of winning all 4 playoff series in a row, which is not the only thing that marks success, but like if they want to get there, it's going to start with Anthony Edwards. And I kind of always say, like, anytime you doubt that Ant can't do something, he'll rub it in your face immediately. So
yeah, and I think this has come off as rather aggressively negative on Anthony Edwards, coming off of probably the best individual season of his career prior to when he got hurt. And I think if we're being complimentary to Ant, is that I do believe he's going to iron out these flaws because, to your point, he has consistently gotten better every season, and he's kind of whatever the fatal flaw that we point to in Anthony Edwards' game at the end of a season, he comes back and he's really good at that thing the next season. Like, the question when he was being drafted was, can he shoot? Turn himself into the best 3-point shooter in the NBA. The question after the Oklahoma City series was like, can he shoot from the mid-range to break out of these like aggressive doubles and this overloaded defense that he's facing? Comes back, he's a great mid-range shooter. Question out of the draft is like, does he care about basketball? Is he like focused? Like, okay, now he's just developed like some of the best guard footwork in the NBA. Like he does take these things and learn from them and get better. So yeah, I think it is fair to believe that if he learned the right lessons from this most recent run, that he will get in the lab and figure out the stuff that he needs to do to apply those learnings.
Yeah, and he should be commended for his playoff play this season, given the injuries. Obviously, down the stretch of the San Antonio series, I think the injury was starting to catch up to him, which makes sense. But the fact that he played it all in the first 2 games, the fact that he had really solid games 3 and 4, I think should be commended. And even prior to the hyperextended knee, they don't win the Denver series without the spacing he applies. And he was on his opposite knee was a bad knee during that series. Yeah, the runner's knee. So hopefully he can get and I'm sure Tim Connolly said today, like there's no surgery planned for Ant or anything like that. It's just going to be a normal offseason of rest and recovery. Where do you think the culpability for Finch with the moodiness, the not taking the regular season seriously? Because I've seen a lot of people want to fight online. I'll add that I want to fire Finch, and personally, I just don't get it. I think Finch is widely considered, even this is low, like a top 10 NBA coach, probably higher. I think around the league, he's considered a solid coach. And if the Wolves were to let him go, I think a lot of people would go, what the heck is happening over in Minnesota? And especially in terms of like I think he did a really good job against Denver, and you can point to another last season against the Lakers, the Sun series, the first Denver, he's done a lot of good jobs. And I think he didn't do well enough he probably Finch needs to do better than he did in the San Antonio series, even if I don't think there were as many levers he really had to pull. And on some level, like if your team's underperforming, that's on some level on the coach. I have a really hard time being like, yeah, the players didn't give a shit and that's the coach's fault. Like I really think it's on the players more than it is on the coach. But if the same issues come up next year, then maybe that changes my mind. But where are you on the Finch capital D discourse?
Yeah, I mean, I think the amount of vitriol towards Chris Finch is a little bit outsized. I certainly don't think that Chris Finch is a perfect coach, and he is not without his flaws, but to your point, like, I just don't really understand, like, there's this weird thing that happens, and this just kind of happens because everyone wants someone to blame, and they like the players. So, except for some of the players, they like the players they don't like when they play
players
poorly.
They don't. The specific player
fault.
They don't like, they're also trying to ship out, and that one I agree with them a little bit more.
And so the coach is always like an easy scapegoat, but the thing that happens a lot with like the Finch discourse is all of the good stuff that Chris Finch has accomplished as a coach, that would have happened anyway. He doesn't get credit for that because obviously Anthony Edwards was going to develop into the player that he's become. Obviously Jaden McDaniels was going to turn into the player he's become. Obviously Naz Reid was going to become the player he's become. Obviously Nickeil Alexander-Walker was secretly good this whole time. But Josh Minot's his fault. And Rob Dillingham's his fault. And when they lose in the playoffs, that's his fault. But when they win in the playoffs, that's because Anthony Edwards is awesome in the playoffs. And like Rudy Gobert is like, they've made it work with Rudy Gobert defensively and offensively, but like, and that's not his fault because Rudy Gobert is great, but Rudy Gobert can't catch. And that's Chris Finch's fault because why are we putting him in a position where like if you are of the mind that you don't like the coach and you want the coach fired, you're going to view the negative things as his fault and you are just going to ignore all the positive things. And I think on balance, his track record is he has just accomplished enough that I think he has earned the right to fail as the coach. And like this season, like I said, was the worst season they've had in 3 years. So like he is trending down towards like potentially being fired. Like if they're in the play-in next year, they get bounced in the first round next year. Like, yeah, I think there's a decent chance Chris Finch loses his job. I do not think a second-round exit against a team that won 60 games with what appears to be the best player in the world, like kind of having his like ascendant arrival party right after just kind of pantsing a team that was heavily favored against them the round before, is grounds for him to lose his job. Like, and like to the point of like the consistent lack of energy during the regular season. Like, I don't know. Greg Popovich is the greatest coach of all time. And he will tell you that is not the coach's job to motivate the players. Like the coach cannot convince the players to play hard or not. The players convince themselves whether they are going to play hard or not. So yeah, that like ultimately where I stand is like, I don't think he is infallible. I don't think he is like stamped for life as the coach. I certainly don't think they are going to fire him this offseason, and I don't think they should fire him this offseason.
Well, this offseason, they're not letting him go this offseason. That's it's not opinion.
Listen to Tim Connolly talk about him. Like,
they're not
there's just
letting
such
him go.
An outsized gap between the Twitter conversation and the internal conversation and the league-wide conversation. There was a game earlier this year. They lost a game earlier this year, and maybe it was someone had some quote after the game, and everyone on Twitter was like, "This is it. He's getting fired." And I was like, "What are you guys like? This is not. What are you guys? They're not going to fire him in the middle of the season."
Yeah, that was like when they compared it to the Michael Malone firing last year with Denver, and I thought Denver kind of picked up their season last year in spite of letting go of their coach with a week left in the season or whatever it was, not because of it. And maybe they made the right, and they probably did. Denver made the right decision to switch coaches, but like,
I think also
go ahead.
Mid-season coach firings always get outsized credit because there is what is called a dead cat bounce. because nobody fires their coach when things are going well. Teams that fire their coaches are teams that were expected to be good and are underperforming. So when you fire the coach, when the team returns to their normal talent level, it's easy to credit all that to the coach, when in actuality, they were probably going to do that anyway. Like, the team with Nikola Jokic on it was probably going to be a pretty tough out in the playoffs, regardless of who was calling the plays last season.
Just like, it's returning to the mean almost makes the retroactively people like the firing. Yeah, it's. I think it's one of those things where it's like, he deserves criticism for certain parts of the season, almost maybe large parts of the season outside of the Denver series where he almost certainly deserves credit. But like you said, I think letting him go, and I think what I've seen a lot is like this idea that Chris Finch is Mark Jackson and whoever they hire next is Steve Kerr. And I guess there is a small percentage chance that you let go of Steve Kerr, you hire the next guy is even better, and you go to whatever. I'm not saying that that's impossible. My point is like the Bucks firing Budenholzer and then hiring with the person in between Doc Rivers later, I think is just as equally likely of a scenario. And so I kind of almost hate bringing it up because I don't think like it's not a conversation happening in that building. And so it's like for and I've talked about it plenty. It's like for us to bring it up is like we're giving into the discourse or whatever.
And like big sea-changing roster changes and coach firings and all those things, like in the life cycle of having a superstar like Anthony Edwards, you have a limited number of those bullets to fire. And it is best to kick the can down the road on firing those bullets than to try to like enter into the carousel of constantly trying to fix things before they become problems, because that just accelerates the unrest. Like, if Anthony Edwards is happy right now and they are winning playoff series consistently and he likes the coach, I think you need to be really, really sure that the next coach is going to be a lot better before you fire that bullet, because you just start the clock on Anthony Edwards when you start making those changes. And we've just seen historically with this team, like, these coaching carousels are nightmares sometimes. Like, The next coach is not always the right coach. Pretty frequently, the next coach is not the right coach.
And I think about, like, in the same way, there's only so many players-only meetings you can have during the season. There's only so many times the coach can come into a film session and rip them out, things that definitely happen during this regular season. But it's like, coach comes in and rips you a new one for how they played. It's like a couple months later he does the same thing. It's like, well, the third time it rolls around, like, it's not going to have the same impact. So it's kind of the same thing with letting go of the coach. But let's talk about he who should not be named. The goosebumps are not happening all the time. During this first series, there was no goosebumps. The goosebumps were dead. It was brutal. I obviously the memes and the in arena stuff originates with you guys, but like I'd imagine you and the rest of the Crunch Bears and Pants crew have. I don't want to say turned on Julius, because I think you would have said the same things. You know, like, it's not like you guys were actually the head of the fan club or whatever. But what do they do? What are we doing with Julius, man?
Yeah, I mean, I have really, really tried over the course of the Julius Randle experience to have, like, when he has not played well, to have some empathy for him, because I think Julius's fatal flaw is not that he doesn't care. I think his fatal flaw is that he has very little control. He's very unstable emotionally, and that is just like not like he can do a better job managing that, but that is not something that is necessarily in his control. And I want to have empathy for him on that. And I have like said stuff like that on our show before. He did not do himself any favors in that Spurs series with the body language. And like, he was never going to play well in that Spurs series. Like that matchup was like he has no chance against a player like Victor Wembanyama, where if he cannot, like, even if he can like physically dominate him and like put his shoulder in his chest, he can't generate enough space for Wemby's arms to still not be a factor, and he can't get to his mid-range shot because Wemby can still contest that from like deep drop coverage and all that stuff. Like, but he did like give in to the frustration, and I think the fact that he did not show up for exit interviews, was that today or yesterday? Whenever exit interviews were.
A couple players did their exit interviews the night of Game 6, and those included Anthony Edwards, because he probably likely also wouldn't. But they communicated that to us before. And Julius was supposed to be, I think, the plan pregame.
But
he was
like
supposed to do
out.
his exit interview the night of Game 6, and he dipped out. And then they told us, well, he'll come tomorrow, and then he did not.
And so I just like, I can't sit here and say and defend him for that. Like, that is not like an emotional in the moment decision. That is that is just a bad decision on his part. So, I mean, ultimately, like, it does feel like the Julius Randle thing has run its course a little bit. I do get a little bothered when the critiques of Julius Randle get like weirdly personal online. Mm-hmm. Like, there's plenty we can critique him about as a basketball player, and he was horrible in the playoffs and has largely been horrible in the playoffs his entire career. And so if the Timberwolves aspire to like reach the next level, I don't think you can say that Julius Randle is a player you want to have on your team for that, or certainly not a player you want to build around for that. So yeah, I think it's never good to go into any sort of transaction window under the assumption that like a player must go by any means necessary, because that is how you lose trades. I think they should negotiate from a position of strength and be willing to go into next season with Julius Randle. Maybe that's like the vibe they give off externally. I do not think it would be a good idea for them to go into next season with Julius Randle on the team. What can they get for him? I don't really know. I think generally speaking, we undervalue internally the players we don't like, and we overvalue internally the players we do like. Like, I think we have a much higher opinion of Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels than the league at large does, and I think we have a much lower opinion of Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert than the league at large does. Like, I don't think that they could trade Julius Randle for like a franchise-changing superstar. I do think there are teams, particularly in the Eastern Conference, that will want Julius Randle. I think there are teams that are going to want to just kind of get to some base level of competence that would want Julius Randle. There might be some teams that are tanking that want Julius Randle. But what does want Julius Randle mean, I think, is really the question. So yeah, I think it's run its course. I think the time is now, but honestly, I think this offseason, basically anything but Anthony Edwards is like probably on the table or like being considered. Like, I think we're looking at a potential vastly different roster going into next season, because I think they're going to exhaust all options.
Yeah, and I was just looking at this. If they currently have 8 players from last season that are currently under contract next season. One of those is Dante DiVincenzo, who I was seeing people like, well, if he can come back like after the All-Star break. No. Dante, the earliest he's going to play is like April. And even that, I don't, when we're thinking about...
I think he's like the most likely guy to get traded. He's just like...
Unfortunately...
He's just like a math problem. And if they want him back, they can just sign him next year. Like...
Yeah, I think... And even if he was on the roster, like... When you're projecting out how many wins you think the Wolves can get, you gotta assume Dante's a 0. Like, it's just, even Tatum came back in like an incredible amount of time, and even he got injured at the end of the playoffs, and I think that was part of it. I know people like maybe Halliburton could have came back if the Pacers were in any position to try to win games.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen him.
Yeah, he's gone through a lot.
He's had a rough
other
go.
than the Achilles. So I agree with you. Like, to me, this is like almost a higher profile case of the whole D'Angelo Russell thing. And it was funny as he never got the true D'Angelo Russell treatment because the Wolves are so far out of the game in Game 6 that everyone got benched. But it was funny to see Jordan McLaughlin out there for the Spurs as like we got D'Lo 2.0 on the bench for the Wolves. But I think with Julius, obviously, if you get whatever his theoretical value is, if you're getting 4 quarters on the dollar, not even like four, if you're getting 1-to-1 value for him, I think you just have to move it. And even if you're getting like 90%, you're probably still doing it. But if you're just taking back 75% because you feel like you have to, I don't think that would be smart. I do think the type of player, I mean, you could just trade him for like picks, I guess, but even if they do, I think they'd try to reroute the picks to get a player or players back.
Like this is the conundrum I have had with Julius Randle for the whole time he's been here, is that I think he represents a role on the team that is necessary and difficult to acquire. And so I don't love the idea of liquidating him for role players because they are so pick strapped. It just becomes so hard to find like a true high level second creator to put next to Anthony Edwards. And like I said, Julius Randle has his flaws, and I don't think he is the ideal second banana, like secondary offensive hub to play next to Anthony Edwards. But he's the only guy on the team right now that can do that. And I know we love Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid, and we think they have all this potential in the world. I do not think Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid are capable or will at any point in their career be capable of being the second best offensive player on a team with title aspirations. Like, I think that is kind of foolish and like Homerish to believe that level. I think those are fantastic players that they should try really, really hard to keep. I think those are starting caliber players on really, really good teams. They need a second guy to be able to run offense through. And Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid, in my eyes, are play finishers, not play starters. And so in a Julius Randle trade, I think it's kind of important that you get some version of that back. And that's going to be hard to do because of his depressed market. Maybe it's a situation where you're liquidating him for picks or role players, and then you're doing a Rudy Gobert trade that brings in that guy, or you're going for some sort of like really depressed asset that you believe in a lot more. Like, I'm no big Ja Morant fan, but like maybe you can just like get Ja Morant for nothing, and Tim Connolly's loves himself a depressed asset. Like, that was what Julius Randle was when he traded for him. And I think he was like to some degree proven right. Like, Julius Randle was better in his time with the Timberwolves than I expected when they traded for him. But I don't think they can go into next season and just be like, all right, this is the seat. Like, if they truly have aspirations to like win a title in the next 2 or 3 years, I do not think that they can plan on Jaden McDaniels being option B on the team. I just don't think that is a recipe for a team that is good enough.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with Jaden especially more than Naz, but with Jaden, I think getting him to do more offensively in general is something that they should and need to do, but like to your point, not to the level of where he's the secondary offensive creator, like more like the third type player where in certain lineups he is finishing a little bit more, or he is playmaking a little bit more, but it's really like with the core lineup, it's finishing and stuff like that.
And that's where if you just like repurpose Julius Randle into like, if next season all they've done is replace Julius Randle with a similarly flawed player that is just more of a guard and a ball mover, like I know he's probably more valuable than Julius Randle, but like Kyrie Irving, for all of his off the court faults, is like the archetype of player that I think makes a lot of sense. Like a player that doesn't need to like stand and dribble and hold the ball a lot, but a player that is going to like have that like 0.5 mentality, that can shoot and that can handle when Anthony Edwards is getting like aggressively doubled. Like, that is going to move the ball more than Julius Randle does, then that'll empower Jaden McDaniels to be a really good third option. And that will empower Naz Reid when he's on the court to be a really good third option. And I think that is like the ideal role for those guys, is for those guys to be the beneficiaries of really good offense, not the drivers of it necessarily.
And the point I agreed with you, especially is you can't do a 2-for-1 trade with Julius, even if it's fair value you're getting back, like where you're getting 2 role players back for Julius. That is just not a trade that the Wolves have depth.
They have enough role players, yeah. Like the role players are not the problem.
The Wolves have and will have enough depth even without Dante DiVincenzo. Even if you just ate his $12.5 million salary for next year, like that's assuming you re-sign Io, which I just given that there's no one with cap space, I think re-signing Io for a couple $1 million above the mid-level, I would imagine is possible. And then you're looking at Bones and Mike Conley and a taxpayer mid-level exception to, like, they'll have enough. Kyle Anderson too might be back. Who knows? Like, I'm not worried about the depth of this team. I'm worried about who is their second best player, at least on offense, next season. And so I think the type of Julius trade, but I haven't really dug deep into the exact players, but like the type of Julius trade that I think is going to make sense is you're taking back a similarly flawed player, and kind of, again, like the D'Lo trade, where when Mike wasn't necessarily flawed in the same way D'Lo is, but like you're taking back, I mean, Kyrie Irving's a good example. Andrew Carlson posted DeJounte Murray, I think, is both are injury question marks. I think John Morant is too big of a question mark for this, but like that general player where, yes, if things go, if the flaws about them, like they have with Julius, if those accentuate, the trade's going to look bad. But if those flaws go away, if you're able to paper over those flaws better, you're going to look extraordinarily smart. And that's going to propel you towards being a better team than you were the past 2 years.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. We're going to spend all offseason, and I think they're going to exhaust these options, but like people are going to be dreaming on Giannis and Kawhi and the guys that don't carry a lot of question marks with them, right? But I think what we're probably looking at is someone who falls more into, like I said, the depressed asset guy that we believe in more than the league at large does, and that is DeJounte Murray is a good example of that. I think a guy that I'm not like super into, but I know Tim Connolly has been a fan of in the past and seems like he is probably gettable in the Julius Randle price range, is Brandon Ingram. I'm not, I don't love that. I'm not wishing for that.
That feels like deck chairs on the Titanic, man.
I'm not wishing for that. I'm just saying, like, they tried to trade for Brandon Ingram 2 years ago. So like, I think that's the type of, I think that is more like the caliber of player you're looking at. It's just a matter of like finding the one that you think is better than they have shown to this point. Because that's what I think that's the actual like pool you're swimming in if you're trading Julius Randle. Like Julius, you're not trading, they don't have the caliber of stuff to trade Julius Randle for Kawhi Leonard. Like
you'd have to trade your 2033 first along with Julius, and that'd be a tough sell, just given, I mean, Kawhi's really good. I don't know, maybe that would make sense. I contract difference, maybe Dante's. I think that's a lot of what might happen here, is unfortunately, as much as we don't want Dante on the team and his last play as a Wolf being his Achilles tear would be a real bummer. Similar, I mean, Joe Ingles' last play with the Jazz was a torn Achilles at Target Center. I think stapling Dante's $12.5 million to Julius's $33 million. If they're going big game hunting, that'd be but even if like they're trading for someone that has more value than Julius, but but they're stapling a contract they don't like to the Wolves books, and like Dante's coming back so that the other team can get an expiring contract. Maybe that's something that might make sense. I don't know. It's a lot of questions to answer. I guess the other one is like, I think it makes a lot of sense to trade Rudy Gobert almost regardless. maybe less so if you're trading Julius, but certainly if you can't find a proper Julius trade, I just think the front court, and it's really not even
whether
a
they trade him or
criticism.
not, I think the time has come for that. And I literally do this
I think
every
you've been trading
offseason.
high.
I do this. I've literally done this every offseason. They've had Rudy Gobert. Like, he is a tremendous player. He is one of the best defensive players of all time. He is going to the Hall of Fame. And he has had a tremendous run in a Timberwolves uniform. I don't think people fully grasp, like, if you are ranking all of the players in Timberwolves history, I don't think people are prepared for how high Rudy Gobert is on that list.
Top 5, no doubt.
Yeah, I would say he is closer to the top 5 than he is to the top 10.
I think he's in it. What Kevin Love, give me a break.
So all that said, there is a time between now and 3 years from now that Rudy Gobert is going to stop being a good basketball player. Like, he has already defied the aging curve for people his size, certainly people his size with kind of the lack of offensive skill that he has. And I think I would rather be a year too early on the Rudy Gobert trade than a year too late. And I just think they have kind of bumped their head up against the ceiling of what they can be as a Rudy Gobert team. Like, I think they had a chance to win the title a couple years ago when they lost that series to Dallas. I certainly don't think they really didn't have a chance in that Oklahoma City series, not because of Rudy Gobert, but I don't think, clearly they weren't even comfortable playing him in that. And the same thing happened against the Spurs in this series. And I just think, like I said, I think he is as fantastic a player as he is. I think he is a limiting player in a lot of degrees. And I think the fact that they have Anthony Edwards, I think that they need to maybe lean into some more balanced players and maybe just try to be a little bit more normal of a team than to try to hunt this upside that comes with these huge flaws. You don't get players as good defensively as Rudy Gobert that are good offensively, because those players cost $50 million. But for $30 million, you can have a great defensive player that's massively problematic offensively. So yeah, I think the time has come. I think that they could get a lot for him. I think there are teams, once again, particularly in the Eastern Conference, that would love to have Rudy Gobert. I think the Boston Celtics would love to have Rudy Gobert. I think the Charlotte Hornets would love to have Rudy Gobert, and would probably be willing to trade a decent amount for him.
Yeah, I think you can win the title with Rudy Gobert as one of your 3 best players and your starting center. I believe that that's possible in a vacuum. I do.
I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if it's possible in a world where Oklahoma City and San Antonio exist.
Well, I mean, if Wemby's going to play like this, like he did in Game 1, we already talked about why that doesn't necessarily happen. But yeah, no one's gonna. I think to beat Oklahoma City like San Antonio, I think you just on some level have to have 5 shooters out there. It's not because Wemby can't guard the perimeter. It's because that's the only, you just have to have some way to get him even 2 feet out of the paint. But even I think Rudy's a phenomenal player, and the wanting to trade him, it really has nothing to do with him, to be honest. I think to maximize Rudy Gobert on some level, you have to build your offense not around him, but you just got to get him the ball sometimes. And especially when they're doubling Ant, you got to throw the ball to Rudy. You just have to.
You can't, I know you got to do it. You can't do it against the Spurs or Oklahoma City. I know
Sure.
That's how you break the aggressive double stuff with Ant. You got to get it to Rudy in the middle. Rudy can't do anything against those teams in the middle. And he is like a turnover waiting to happen with those guys coming and swiping at the ball. He can dominate. His superpower is he can dominate the regular season. He can kill on the glass. He can be an offensive factor offensively against really bad teams when he can be an offensive rebounding threat. But when you give teams as good defensively as San Antonio and Oklahoma City a player that they do not have to guard, their defense becomes unbreakable. And I think that is the ultimate flaw, is that Rudy Gobert has just been unable to, against good defenses, be a factor offensively. Like, he has just never developed any sort of finishing move that's not catching a lob. Like, if you give it to him at the free throw line, like, the play is cooked.
Yeah, I think maybe better put, even just ignoring try to win the title, like, because Ant and Gobert are just not a great pairing offensively. And that, again, I believe that's more about Ant's play style than it is about Rudy. And so because of that, I think there's other teams out there that could maximize Rudy Gobert's value more than the Timberwolves can with their current roster. And to me, when that's the case about really any player, then you should trade him to that team, because they'll pay you, theoretically, in a perfect world, they'll pay you what is more valuable than Gobert to you, but is less valuable than Gobert to them. That being the trade package, where you're both getting surplus value. Similar, I think the Knicks, because of the second apron, but like, that's what the CAD trade was. I think that trade has totally been a win-win, even with Julius's play. Like, it sucks that it's the case because it's all money related, all spreadsheet related, and that's boring and dumb and stupid. But like, it was a trade that needed to happen for the Wolves. And so I think this potential Rudy trade falls into it. And similar to Julius, I don't think, like, you can't and shouldn't trade, like, get 75 cents on the dollar. Like, if you're trading Rudy, you need to get a proper trade package. And so if that never surfaces, then you should go into next season with Rudy Gobert. But like you, I think there's a lot of teams in the East. In a different universe, the Lakers would probably be. I don't actually think
Luka hates him.
No, yeah, and the cap stuff doesn't work in the trade, all that stuff. But like, I'm just saying, like, if you're drafting 2K rosters, I think a Rudy Gobert and Luka Doncic pairing would make a lot of sense. And so I think, like, a team that Detroit for Julius or Rudy would make sense.
Detroit for Rudy makes no sense to me. That team, the last thing that team needs is more spacing issues.
Yeah, I'm just, if he goes elsewhere or something, that's kind of where I was thinking. Charlotte is another team. Unfortunately, when I look at the salary that would need to come back,
it would be Miles Bridges.
Yeah, so no thank you. Especially as someone that covers his team and interacts with players, no thank you. So I mean, it's all, again, I haven't gone through every roster and got broken out the trade machine yet, but I just think it, like, if from a broader standpoint, I think the Wolves, like, fundamentally the roster from a championship perspective just doesn't work. The roster is flawed, and I think the Wolves have done extremely well the past 2 seasons, and maybe if you want to throw in the third season with Cat, like, they've done to win 5 playoff series in 3 years with a roster that doesn't really make sense is commendable. But at a certain point, let's try to get the roster to make sense. And I don't think they had a path to do that last offseason. And I think they more or less do, or at least it'll be easier to make trades this offseason.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, Tim Connolly has said as much, like, when he's been asked about it, that, like, they don't view the team as, like, they view the team as, like, there's just going to be these different iterations of the team, like, built around the sun that is Ant. And so, like, I think this collection of planets orbiting Anthony Edwards has really, like, run its course. And I think, like I said, I understand from a fan perspective internally, and, like, I'm in this boat too. I would do everything in my power to not trade Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels. I do not think those guys are considered untouchable in trade talks this offseason. Like, I think if they have a chance to get Kawhi Leonard or Giannis Antetokounmpo and trade one of those guys, I think they're probably going to trade one of those guys to do that. And I don't necessarily think, like, from a strictly business value perspective, that that's the wrong decision. I have my own reasons on why I don't want that to happen beyond just, like, I think those guys are championship players. Like, I think there is value as a fan to have the same guys on the team for, like, a really, really long time. Like, if they don't trade Jaden McDaniels and he, like, plays out the rest of this contract and, like, signs another extension, like, he's gonna have his number retired in Target Center. And I think, like, as much as we want to say, like, rings or bust, I think that stuff matters too. Like, that, like, I think it would be cool if 30 years from now you're in whatever their new stadium is and you look up in the rafters and number 3 is next to number 5 and number 21 because Jaden McDaniels played 15 years for the Timberwolves. So, like, for that reason, I would love to keep Jaden McDaniels. But I don't think organizationally that's how they are thinking about these things. Like, I think generally speaking, when people talk about like the core of a team, people vastly overestimate how big the core is. Like, the core is Anthony Edwards. And like I said, they'll try really hard not to trade Naz and Jaden, because I think those are like the next rung of guys that they really like. But ultimately, I think Anthony Edwards is really the only thing that's untouchable going into this offseason in their heads.
Yeah, I agree. And it, like you mentioned, it's a reason the Cat trade, while I would even sitting here now, is the trade that they had to make. The fact that the reasoning for that is a spreadsheet and is the numbers, like, that just stinks. For fans, the fact that you had to trade, the fact that it made sense to trade at the time the second greatest player in the history of the franchise, that which obviously Ant has always would have passed him for that, but at the time, I argued Cat was the second greatest player in the history of the franchise, and certainly the longest tenured, all that. And the fact that the NBA rules made it so, like, it just was not a no-brainer, but, like, in retrospect, it made complete sense to trade him. Like, that's just a bummer. And I would probably say, like, the NBA, if Cat weren't this weird, like, weirdly disliked figure across the NBA, if this were a different team in a different market, I think there would have been a lot more uproar of, like, wait, this team had to trade one of their most longest tenured player because he made too much money because of the second apron. Like, what are we doing here? So that's a bummer. And so in the similar way, like, trading Jaden or trading Naz would be a bummer. But, like, I don't know. I've been thinking about a Giannis trade, which I think ultimately, and this will be our last topic, but I think I just have a hard time. The more the Giannis trade is really tough to make, and I just think I ultimately think another team will be more desperate towards the Bucks and offer more and be able to cobble together more. But, like, I don't know. I even kind of go back and forth of whether it's worth it to trade Giannis, because he's had some weird stuff the past couple of months, but also maybe that's overrated too. And you're still looking at, like, trading for one of the 5 best players in the league, and if you can get him for what seems like a softer trade market than there should be, then you do it. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about a Giannis trade?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to hear about it a lot in the offseason. I think they're going to try really, really hard. I'm in a similar boat to you that I don't think they have the juice to make a trade work. Like, I think they could put basically everything they have on the table, and I think someone would just beat it. Is kind of my perspective on it. And whether I think that's the right decision or not, like the GMification of fanhood, like, I think we, like, love to know the plan and what everything is. And it's like, it is true that it's hard to imagine them, like, just gutting this roster for Giannis Antetokounmpo and then having Giannis, Ant, and nothing else. But it's possible that the only chance they have to compete with Oklahoma City and San Antonio is to put 2 of the 5 best players in the world on the same team and figure the rest of it out. Mm-hmm. Like, that is, like, that is not a gamble that's, like, unfounded in my head. Like, I see the logic in that they're just like, they might just be like, there might not be a savvy path to get where we want to go. We might just need to, like,
brute force it,
throw these 2 amazing players together and be like, fuck it, let's see what else, let's see if this works.
Yeah, and I think obviously the health with Giannis would be the biggest thing, right? But I remember looking back, it's like, if you have 2 of the even 10 best players in the league, like, it's really hard not to win a bunch of games doing that. And obviously if Giannis gets hurt, or if the Giannis thing didn't work out, you'd be out of moves. Obviously, I think would be true. I mean, but
it's a risk. But, like, they might just need to take a risk. Like I said, there might not be a cold, hard, clean, calculated path to get from here to an NBA championship. And if that is what they're trying to do, they might just need to, like, throw everything on the table and be like, let's go for it.
Yeah. And I don't know if what do you? I guess I'll hold you a little bit longer. Last, what would you think about like almost like a quote unquote soft reset idea where you trade Julius for picks, you trade Rudy for role players and picks or something, and you grab these picks, and in a year or two, then you flip those picks, so you'd still be competitive next year. You'd still be a top six playoff team. You still like what they did this year. You Ant goes crazy, you eliminate the fourth seed, the third seed, and but you're not a title contender. And then you go all in. Do you think that's, shout out Kyle Tiger, gap year, an actual gap year?
Yeah.
Not one that just A-Rod yells at Kyle that he doesn't know what he's talking about.
I mean, whatever I think of the merits of that, I'm just going to say I don't think that's going to happen. I think they are going to, while they have Tim Connolly running things, I think they are going to try to be as good as possible every season. And like, I am not really in the business of not trying to be as good as possible every season while you have Anthony Edwards. Like I said, we love to imagine this like big long runway plan that we can have. But the fact of the matter is, like, outside of like a couple years into the future, we have no idea what's going to happen. Like, you could do a soft reset and Anthony Edwards could have the best year of his career, and then you could go all in the next year and he could pop his Achilles and never be the same again. Like, so while you have the stuff, I think you should go for it. And so like, I don't think that means that they should make foolish trades. Like, I think everything they should consider from like a value perspective, but I do not like the idea of going into next season under the expectation that they are not trying to be as good as possible, because quite frankly, I think like they were the 6th seed this year. I do not think them like going into next season with a lower caliber of talent guarantees or even like puts them in a good position to finish in the top 6 in the West, because like the Spurs and Thunder are going to be there. The Lakers, as long as they have Luka Doncic, are going to be like a regular season, like high level competitive team. Like the Nuggets are still going to have Nikola Jokic. The Utah Jazz are going to be a lot better. The Portland Trail Blazers are going to be getting Damian Lillard back. Like they're probably going to be a lot better. Like we say this every year, but like the West is going to be competitive. And like some of those teams are going to bow out, but like the Rockets aren't going anywhere. They're still going to try. Like the Clippers might be quite a bit worse. Like that's like the Warriors are probably going to be quite a bit worse, but like ultimately I don't think Ant and role players is like, okay, you're in the top 6, let's figure it out from there. I think that is a recipe for ending up in the play-in and missing the playoffs. And I do not think you can miss the playoffs while you have Anthony Edwards, because we talked about like firing bullets and starting the clock. Like I think that is a recipe for Ant to go, whoa, I'm here to be in the playoffs. Why are we not making the playoffs type of thing? Like, I think you can try to sell Ant on some long-term vision plan. I don't think he's going to buy that. I think Anthony Edwards wants them to give him the best roster that they can possibly give him next season and do that every year as long as he's here. And I think that's the recipe for keeping him as long as you can. So I'm not a fan of soft reset, gap year type stuff. And I don't think we have to really worry about it because, like I said, I don't think they're going to do it. So,
yeah. And your point of like we might not have this long runway with, or who knows, like the way the path forward to getting to that long runway with Ant, where you have him for the next decade or whatever, is when he's extension eligible. I think there's like you can sign him to extension next summer, but certainly 2 summers from now will be like the deadline for that. Like. That if you get him signed to that extension, then you'll have these next 3 years that he's currently under contract and like a 4-year extension. Like that's where you got, like, if you, like you mentioned, like you're in the play-in tournament next year, or you, God forbid, miss the playoffs. Like that's when the Ant starts to go, well, maybe a change of scenery would make sense. Where like right now, I don't think he's really anywhere close to that type of feeling.
If they're winning playoff series and they feel like they're in the mix every year, like that is the formula for keeping superstars on your team. Like everyone wants to like trade for their friends and do all this stuff. Like the fact of the matter is, if they're good, Anthony Edwards is not going anywhere. If they're not good, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, and I distinctly remember going out on the road. I was in Miami for work, but I went to Atlanta and Miami. And multiple times I saw families where it was like in Atlanta, I saw half Wolves gear, half Hawks gear. And in Miami, half Wolves gear, half Heat gear. And I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. Timberwolves fans are traveling down for the game. And then I took 2 seconds to look longer and I was like, oh no, those are locals. Those are local families who half their kids are just gigantic Anthony Edwards fans. And it's like, how many years ago in the NBA would that not be the case? The kid in Minnesota would not get that much. Like, Ant is as popular in the NBA, aside from the older guys, but like there aren't very many guys in the NBA that are as popular as Anthony Edwards. He has as big of a shoe contract as anyone coming out of Minnesota. I think if you continue to put, like you mentioned, continue to put solid teams around him, you're winning playoff series, maybe I don't know, like where the path of making the finals as it's been the past 3 years is not that you can squint and you can see it. I think that's the key. So I tend to agree with you on while you're not making all in moves just for the sake of it, or you're not blowing your whatever assets or certain of your players just to blow them off for the sake of it. But certainly if a trade makes sense, the Wolves can and should make it. But Brandon, what do you guys got going over at Crunch Wears No Pants? I'm sure tons of hilarity as always.
We're recording our end of season kind of recap show tomorrow. We've got like our end of season awards that we'll be giving out. And then next week we got another show with a guest coming on to review some stuff we talked about in the preseason. And then we'll pop on from here and there in the off season if they make a big trade. We'll have I think we're probably going to do our live show draft party at Falling Knife again this year. We haven't talked to Dan about that yet, but I think we decided last year that was going to be a regular thing. Nice. We'll do some links talk in the off season too for those who are inclined towards the WNBA as well. But yeah, you can follow us. You can follow us on Twitter and Blue Sky at No Pants Crunch. You can follow me at Brandon Beck 4, and yeah, go Wolves.
Yeah, and I hope that people that for some reason only listen to my show and don't listen to yours, go listen to that one, because it's exactly like this one. There are no differences.
The exact same show. You're like the Jordan Alamat of this show.
The vibes are always good over there, and I obviously you guys do plenty of real basketball talk, but it is always funny when I listen to your show. That's why I like having you on, because sometimes your good basketball opinions over there get trampled a bit, and it always makes me laugh, where it's just like, well, on my show, Brandon would have gotten to finish that sentence.
Sometimes I just got to power through.
So I hope that it's a little bit of a release. Like if I'm providing anything selfishly for your show, it's that you get to talk about a little bit more what you want to talk about, and then Jordan can just trample you over there.
Exactly. I get my takes out here, and then when I say them and they get trampled on, I can just direct people to this feed.
They say it's a bit, but I don't know. It just might be real life. But yeah, go listen to Crunch Wears No Pants. For this pod, I'm going to take at least a week off. We'll see at the end of next week what things, if anything, from the Spurs Thunder series makes me want to find someone to talk about the Wolves with. But until then, for Brandon, I'm Ryan. Thank you everyone for listening. Go Wolves.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Ayoo!